joining us right now. And we are going to go ahead and stream live to Facebook. I'm excited today. Welcome everyone to Kitchen Conversations. I'm April Berg. I am really excited today to have Jon Holden with us. He is our local IAM 751 president and directing business officer for Machinists Union District 751. So welcome, Jon, to Kitchen Conversations, and welcome.
Thank you, April.
Yeah, it's hard. I wish I could have you over for a cup of coffee. I tell you, IAM 751 is so important to our district, so important to so many families. So having this conversation today is definitely a kitchen table issue. So yeah, let's just jump in it. We've got a lot of good stuff to cover.
Okay.
Can you tell our folks a little bit about our Machinists Union 751, the folks you represent, and really what you do?
Yes, and thank you for this opportunity. Our members are amazing. We were organized, our district, in 1935 when we organized at the Boeing company. So we've been around for, over 80 years now.
Wow.
Our members are hardworking, they're family oriented, they're generous, and they're very supportive of their union, and they've understood what solidarity can do for workers in a bargaining unit, and in a way to give power to each other.
Absolutely. Well, and I like that you said you've been in the community a long, long time. So what's that relationship with the community? Because it's not just the fact that your folks are at Boeing, but that you're in the community and you've been here for decades.
We have, our members don't just work here. They volunteer here. They spend time in their schools, their children's schools. We do a lot of volunteer projects within the community, whether it's serving meals at missions, or we build wheelchair ramps,
Wow.
support Northwest Harvest. In fact, we generally contribute between 10 and 14,000 hours a year from our members in the efforts that they do. So.
Wow, that's incredible. And I'm glad you brought up volunteering, because I always think of the economic impact of union workers to our community. But you're right, the volunteer hours, that's huge. And so I guess the thing that's top of mind for so many folks is COVID and this public health crisis that we're in. And so just maybe tell folks how it's impacted the folks that you represent, but also that relationship with Boeing. And so, the workplace, so COVID in the workplace, and how do you think the company's doing? And has there been transparency through this process?
Well, when we first began to be impacted by COVID, we demanded to bargain with all of our employers. So we don't just represent Boeing. We have, roughly 45 other bargaining units across Washington state. And it was important for us to address personal protective equipment, hand washing, hand sanitizer, masks, and all that associated PPE. And at Boeing, we engaged immediately. We talked about all those safety procedures, and it was important that we did so. Our members work in very close proximity to each other.
Yeah.
And social distancing is one of the toughest things to accomplish in our workplace, because there's a lot of us that work inside the aircraft close to each other. And it was very concerning for all of us. So the positive thing is we engaged early. Boeing put together a plan that was approved through state L&I. We were able to have conversations both with L&I and Boeing, and the plan that was put in place has generally kept people safe.
That's awesome.
So we've worked hard to work with Boeing on that standard. We also have language in our contract that allows us to stop work when we believe a safety issue is so great that we need to address it immediately. And so we've done that multiple times early on. If there weren't gloves available, if there wasn't hand sanitizer available, or other situations where our members deemed it necessary. But through that relationship, we were able to work with Boeing and ensure that we haven't seen a transmission of the virus really start to move from the community to the workplace.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're still monitoring every week on positive people that have positive tests to ensure that we're not seeing that.
Mhm.
But overall, it's scary for everyone,
Yeah.
but we're doing the best we can.
Well, and something that you said kind of struck me, right? Contract. And so that contract, that MOU, your relationship as a union with Boeing is contractual. And so there are things, it's not just willy nilly. It wasn't just that, oh, Boeing wants to do this. And so it's being a good employer because out of the goodness of their heart, it's contractual. And so what made me think when you said that is the fact that the folks you represent have this contract with their employer so that they know with certainty, not just about pay and benefits, but about protection, safety, and it's all really transparent. So I guess can you talk to me a little bit about the importance of that contractual relationship and representation in the workforce and why it's so important?
Yes, absolutely. Our members have rights,
Yeah.
and those rights allow them to bargain with their employer, whether it's Boeing or
Mhm.
other contractors or businesses that we represent. And through those bargaining rights, we're able to prioritize what's important for our
Mhm.
membership. Our membership tells us what's important to them, and we negotiate that. And over the long term, over the long haul, we're able to build on that
Mhm.
foundation. And we create rights within the contract that give us protections, especially around safety. And it's something that we're proud of,
Mhm.
that we're going to continue to build over generations.
Mhm.
I'm lucky that, and our members are lucky that we benefit from those negotiations that people did long before we got here.
Yep.
And it's our duty to ensure that those that come long after we're gone still
Mhm.
have these quality benefits and provisions within our contract. So,
Yeah, and and it's generational, and it's also it's fluid because when you think about this public health crisis that we're in, no one saw it, right? Like it happened, and you were still able because of that contract to make adjustments and have protections for your workers. So it's not like a stagnant thing that sits there. But when you talk about generational, I immediately think of that middle class promise, right? That's a generational promise, is that your kids, your kiddos are going to be just as good off, if not better than you are. And that generational promise, I think of our union partners and unions like yours have really made good on it so that we could have good middle class jobs for everyone who wants them. And so talk to me a little bit about the community, because when you have that job, it doesn't just impact the worker, it impacts the community that the worker is in. And I'm thinking about, my 44th district here, I'm thinking about Boeing and
mhm.
the impact on the community that IAM 751 has. So if you could share a little bit of that with the folks at home.
Yeah, I mean, the things that we're able to accomplish within aerospace for aerospace workers,
Mhm.
these jobs are high tech, high skill,
Mhm.
and they should lead someone into the middle class.
Yep.
And with these bargaining rights, that allows our members to be full consumers in our economy, and they'll support other businesses. Every one job with these wages and benefits supports 2 to 3 other jobs in our community. And it's key that um, not only do we fight to maintain these jobs, but
Mhm.
also to improve that over time.
Yep.
And others deserve the same rights that we have.
Absolutely. And so when I'm thinking about that, we're having a lot of conversations in our community at a lot of kitchen tables about Boeing and about the jobs that are at Boeing. And right now you've got what 30,000 ish workers at Boeing on any given day, and a lot of them are represented by your union. And so, in the current environment, we're talking about production and different production decisions. I guess what tools do you have to respond to Boeing? And I guess maybe explain for folks out there what this conversation is with Boeing around production, around union jobs.
Yeah, well, most recently, the company announced that they would do a study to consolidate the 787 in one site. And, those jobs are important to our members. They're important to our community.
Mhm.
They're important to engineers. They're important to everyone that has a role on the 787.
Mhm.
Um, we feel strongly that we've earned those jobs already, that our state, our communities have earned those jobs already. In fact, back in 2003, we and others worked hard to establish tax incentives that would entice Boeing to locate the 787 here.
Mhm.
They made a decision to open up a second line in 2009 in South Carolina. Um, I think we've seen other times where Boeing has held these jobs over our members' heads,
Mhm.
threatened our members' livelihoods, and that in turn threatens our community as well. So
Wow.
I guess the importance of what we're going through right now is just ensuring our members understands what's at stake,
Mhm.
um, that we, understand what we're good at as well. So.
Absolutely. No, and I think, and so right now you're engaging, it sounds like with Boeing, per contract, and it's good that you have those rights in that contract. And so, what's that engagement looking like right now? What can you share with folks about how you're engaging? Because it does feel like sometimes, Boeing and other folks are talking to a lot of people, and maybe I want to make sure and ask you directly. I mean, are they talking to you, and how is that back and forth going, and what are you talking to them about, like in terms of what you want them to do?
There's not a lot of discussion. We
Mhm.
have a right in our contract to submit an alternative proposal. That
Okay.
allows us, and that's a proposal to keep work instead of seeing it outsourced,
Okay.
right? And
Hmm.
so we're working on an alternative proposal that
Hmm.
would keep the Everett line open.
Hmm.
I think it's important to know that the Everett line, uh, the capacity, the capability that we have here, it would be reckless to eliminate a workforce that's delivered for generations, and can ensure that the needs of the future airline customers for the 787 are met when we get out of this pandemic and we start to
Hmm.
sell and deliver more airplanes. So we just want to continue this. We believe it's the right decision. And so we'll work on a proposal to say just that.
Well, and one of the things that I think about when we're talking about a proposal, and I always talk to folks about coming out of this public health crisis better than we came in, right? And one of the ways we do that is having Boeing and having workers like the folks that you represent here in our community, contributing to our community, and like you said, not just in terms of economic value, but those volunteer hours and community service. But it's not the same in South Carolina. They don't, the employees there aren't represented the same way. So can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe what, what's that moonshot look like? I mean, to me, I want everybody represented the way that you represent the folks, the
Yeah.
machinists. And so what would that look like in South Carolina?
Well, representation for our workforce has really served us well. It's served our communities well. We've raised the standard of living. We've created a long-term workforce that they grow into aerospace workers with
Mm-hmm.
high skills and confidence, and they're able to handle anything put before them.
Yep.
We're also advocates for not just our members, but our community.
Absolutely.
And, a unionized workforce in South Carolina would also benefit their workforce and their community, and they
Mhm.
would have an advocate fighting for them. The partnerships that have made Boeing successful here in Washington State are
Mhm.
over 100 years old. We've been working in our communities to build aerospace as a major industry in our state. So there's been elected officials that have stepped up over that over 100 years.
Mhm.
The unions have stepped up. Higher education facilities have
Yes.
worked hard to supply that aerospace talent needed for the future.
Mhm.
And that doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Our infrastructure, which is second to none, was built over 100 years through partnerships and people purposely making decisions to support aerospace. And that would benefit South Carolina as well.
Mhm.
It certainly has benefited our communities, and we got to continue to
Mhm.
work on those partnerships to train the next generation of aerospace workers, to provide the incentives to ensure that we see suppliers locating here in that aerospace infrastructure
Mhm.
can't be beat.
No, absolutely. Well, and I'm glad you talked about just that it wasn't overnight, that these partnerships. So sometimes to me and maybe some other folks that are sitting on the outside looking in, it's put as kind of a zero sum game, right? It's Everett or South Carolina, and everybody can't win. It's zero sum, and talking to you, listening to you, it doesn't sound like zero sum. It sounds like we can have strong, robust aerospace as long as it's on a level playing field, and we have that same intentionality, which comes with representation in both places. And so, but looking here and looking at those partnerships over 100 years old, I feel blessed that this is in our community. So I'm wondering, how do we make that stronger? From a state perspective, how do we make those partnerships, the infrastructure, the education? What can we do to make that stronger?
Well, I can tell you what we're working on. The Machinists have invested millions of dollars into our Machinist Institute.
Yeah.
That institute is a 501c3 organization approved through the IRS that was created through the sale of our low-income housing properties that the district owned for the last 50 years.
Oh.
And so we're proud of that. Our members built that resource for our community, and we sold them to the King County and Seattle Housing Authority, who are, their mission in life is to ensure that they maintain and grow low-income housing. So that was very important to us, but we were able to transfer that resource into a training institute that we're going to commit to build and work with our community to provide that next generation of aerospace workers. We've been lobbying at the state for apprenticeship utilization within aerospace. It hasn't been done before. We think that will create true state certified apprenticeship programs that lead people to a higher standard of living with rights. And those rights they'll be able to build upon for themselves and their coworkers. So that's something that we're working on. I know that the higher education entities are all working on how they can support and train. I know that the elected officials are looking for ways that they can support. So we really have a group of people motivated to ensure that we remain number one and that we do what's necessary to be successful.
Yeah, and so this is long term. This is not just today, not just tomorrow. And I'm kind of getting excited about, post public health crisis. Once everything gets back to normal, we've got the infrastructure here, the partnerships here, to really make this work long term. And I'll tell you, as a leader, I'm definitely committed to working with you on this, because this sounds exciting, and I'm amazed at the work that you've done with it. So I got to ask, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it, as a union, but what does it look like if this doesn't work, right? Like what's at stake here for our communities if we do lose jobs? And just, we've talked about all the amazing contributions that IAM 751 makes and all the union workers that are associated with Boeing, but what does it kind of look like if we can't get it done?
Well, some of this is out of our control. In the past, you've seen the state offer tax incentives, and that's worked. Recently, those were found to be illegal, or some forms of them were found to be illegal. And so those tax incentives aren't in place anymore. We felt strongly that the tax incentives were a wise use of public resources to ensure that an industry that provides for so many good jobs and support other jobs in the community is maintained and grown. So, but we've had those partnerships and we've worked on those things. At this stage, we're going to continue doing the things we do. We have a commitment to our community. We have a commitment to our members. There's a whole lot that can be done in the realm of training, programs, apprenticeship utilization that I think will support. If it doesn't go our way, if the decision is made to consolidate somewhere else, well, we still are number one. We still are the aerospace infrastructure that can't be beat.
Absolutely.
And
I love that. I love that. Yeah, because you're just like, look, we're still here. You're right. It's the people are still here. The infrastructure is still here. I hate even asking the question, because I can't imagine our area, our state, losing not one of these jobs, because they're so important and integral to what we do and who we are as an economy.
And it's a two-way street. I mean, these jobs are important. The Boeing company here in Washington has been critical in our history, and they will be critical going forward. But so are the partnerships, and so is the success that they've had here. This is a two-way street that not just the Boeing company and not just the machinists, but every partner gets to take credit for.
Absolutely. No, and even so, I'm a school board director, and we have Core 24 in our in our district, and that is a aerospace partnership. The kiddos love it; they absolutely love it. The young adults, I should say, right, who are training for that job, and I think as we have these conversations, we have to be mindful of the partnerships, of the longevity, of the generational impacts that these conversations will have. So I'm glad that you've kind of broken it down in bite-sized pieces for us, because I think when it comes to the typical family, if they don't have a direct, connection to Boeing, they might think, oh, why does that affect me? It affects all of us. This is going to affect us for years to come. So that's absolutely huge. So I'll ask you, what's a takeaway, right? So folks at home are listening, and they're learning more about the importance of representation, rights, union growth, union longevity. So what would be a takeaway you'd want folks at home to come away from this conversation with?
Well, I think that if there's a takeaway, it's that the only way we've been successful over this time period, and why we are number one and the number one aerospace manufacturing hub in the world, is because it's been on purpose. Yeah. We've made decisions that support this, and we've invested real dollars from our communities. The communities have invested, and it's been all a plan, and we've planned to do this, and it's been successful, and we can continue to be this way. We can continue to be successful here in Washington State. We just have to continue working on all the same things we have. I think that's probably another discussion on what are all those things, but we've been very successful because it's been a purposeful decision to be so.
Yeah, no, I love that. So I tell you, every week I come away from conversations with kind of a mantra. Somebody says something, I go, oh my gosh. And I just wrote down the word intentional. And so I think that's huge. And that is an awesome takeaway from this conversation is being intentional and having a plan, because as we go through each day, right, it seems like something else is hitting us, be it, a public health crisis or fires or things like, schools. I mean, just so much is coming at us, but we got to be intentional. And in these conversations about Boeing, about our workforce development, and about our future, really our future's on the line, we got to be intentional. So I can't thank you enough for this conversation, Jon, because this is like, it's good stuff. It's amazing. It's amazing that we're dealing with so much at this moment, but I really want folks to be informed and understand how important it is. And you've done it in less than a half hour. You've educated us all. So thank you.
Well, thank you, April. You're awesome. I really appreciated the opportunity here today. Thank you.
No problem. Well, and just to let folks at home know, next week's conversation will be amazing as well. We're going to talk about the state of our cities. And so that's going to be a big, deep conversation with 3 city council members, one from Lake Stevens, one from the city of Snohomish, and one from the city of Mill Creek. So I hope you all can join us. Jon Holden, thank you again. And thank you to the hardworking folks of Machinist District 751, because I love them, and thank you for coming on today. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.